This episode of the Wayang Crew Podcast is brought to you by Times Cineplex. Hey guys, it's Kev.
What's up? This is Naz.
I am Tibby.
This is Del.
And y'all know who this is.
And we are
The Wayang Crew.
Oh yeah.
Hey, welcome back everyone to yet another episode of the Wayang Crew Podcast. We're back this week, and guess what? We're all not here.
Alan.
This is pre-recorded. We're recording this early because Del, Kai, and myself are not here in Brunei at the moment.
Oh, I thought we got snapped.
Ooh, Thanos snapped like that. Although I think I would stay and you guys would probably...
Okay.
I think I'd be the first to go. I just disappeared before even the snap.
Anyway, we thought we'd do a topical episode this week in light of Skyscraper coming out, which is the latest Dwayne Johnson movie hitting theaters here in Brunei Darussalam. It looks good from the trailers, although I think they gave away too much. But as I mentioned before, because of Skyscraper coming out, we'll be doing a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson special episode where we will be talking about our top 3 Dwayne Johnson movies.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Sounds fun.
Sounds fun. So let's start off with Kai. Okay, Kai, your number 3 all the way up to number 1.
Right. Before I even say this, I think I've only watched half of his filmography. Just because he's making so many movies.
Yes. I think it's like 1 a year. This year it's 2.
No, he does 2 to 3 a year.
2 to 3 a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, it's crazy because he's slowly becoming his own genre. And I think we've talked about this before. So, there's some really good stuff like Baywatch.
He's not joking. He's not joking.
And then there's some misses out there. So it's
like
been,
Baywatch?
no, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Like Fast and Furious, 6, 7, and 8.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so it's been, but I find that a lot of his, and this is one of the reasons why his career is so successful, is because he's got a very heartfelt approach to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Success, family, his fans. He's very heartfelt in everything he does. He's very sincere. And I think that's why I like his sincere roles the most.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's not funny. He's a funny guy. So I think my third position would go to Central Intelligence.
Ah, okay. With Kevin Hart.
With Kevin Hart, because I think this was the first time he did a full comedy movie. In the vein of a Will Ferrell action movie.
Okay.
So he's done comedy before, but he's never had to, like in the other guys, he was just like a co-star.
Yep.
And in Be Cool, he was a co-star. And the reason why I like Central Intelligence is just because obviously the director played on the fact that Kevin Hart is much smaller than The Rock, and yet he's the more mature one, so to speak. And The Rock's very funny. He's very
animated.
He's kind of a meathead. He's very carefree. And I didn't realize that I loved this movie until they had a scene where they're in the car and Kevin Hart was recalling information, and The Rock was like, "You're like a brown Google," and then he started pressing on, then boop boop boop. I had to get out of the cinema because I was laughing so hard.
Okay, so Central Intelligence is your number 3. Okay, let's do this. Let's your number 3,
2,
and then Naz's number 3.
Yeah.
Oh, my number 3 would be...
She is not on IMDb page of Dwayne Johnson, by the way.
I think I've watched most of his movies.
Yeah, I've not seen half of them.
Number 3 would be Journey to the Mysterious Island.
Okay, that's the follow-up to Journey to the Center of the Earth.
It's
all right.
This one is with Vanessa and Hudgens and Josh Hutcherson, right?
Vanessa Hudgens, the Disney
from High School Musical.
From High School Musical. Okay,
and Josh
okay.
Hutcherson is, I think, Hunger
I don't
Games.
think I watched that one.
I've not seen that.
Yeah.
I like it because he's kind of taking care of Josh, who's in his pubescent stage in this movie, and he's crushing on the girl.
Ah, okay.
So he's like a father figure as well. So that
It's a fun movie.
Yeah, it's a fun movie.
I found it better than a lot of his other movies.
Yeah, I liked it.
And I guess he has to keep them alive.
Yeah,
at
he
the same
keep
time.
him alive. Does his own, as usual, does his stunts.
Does his own stunts.
Yeah, I liked it there. I liked him there.
Okay, so that's your number 3. Del, your number 3 rock movie.
Because in the beginning I didn't like The Rock. Because when he started to
Even
go into
as a
movies,
wrestler?
When he started to go into movies, that's when I first know him.
So you never watched wrestling?
No, I have. it was at that point when he got really big in wrestling, and then he transitioned into movies, right? But it was at that point in time where I discovered wrestling was all scripted.
Yeah.
And that's when I got very jaded with the whole thing.
Right after like that crossover with WCW, right? Yeah, I was done.
Yeah, at that point also I was done. And I saw this cocky guy, I didn't understand him, and I just wanted to dislike him. But then, so it was Gridiron Gang. That first, because we all remember Scorpion King, right?
Yeah.
No, I've never seen it. I've not seen the movie. I have not seen
it's
it.
like he spoiled the Mummy too.
Okay, I got a story about the Scorpion King because that came out around the same time as the Tomb Raider with Angelina Jolie.
Yep.
And obviously I was a huge fan of The Rock growing up because of the wrestling. I broke my hand once trying to do the people's elbow. I was an impressionable kid. And I remember my dad said, because we were really tight on money, he said, look, we can't watch both movies. You gotta choose. Right? And so since these movies were close to my brother's birthday, he chose Tomb Raider. And I cried because I wanted to watch the Scorpion King. So the other day, after we talked about this in the WhatsApp group, I went on YouTube and looked for the best moments.
Yeah.
Super glad I didn't watch it.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
So cringy. We gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I guess
So bad.
So-
but Del hasn't got to his number 3 yet.
Yeah.
Gridiron Gang was the first movie that he really showed some acting chops.
Okay.
And it is a very heartfelt movie. I just rewatched it. Even though the acting overall, especially with Exhibit, is just horrible, but the story itself, and you see where these kids come from and what they were trying to achieve, and it's just tugs at your heartstring. So this one's number 3 for me.
Okay. Good choice, I guess. Like his first real big movie.
Yeah.
My number 3 is actually, well, I'm kind of placing it in my head now, but number 3 for me would be Fast and Furious 5. And this is because this is where they got The Rock to join the cast of Fast and Furious 5 because I think it was Vin Diesel who said that they felt that the franchise was kind of going in a direction where they didn't know it was going and they needed like a boost. And The Rock...
This was the rebirth of the franchise.
Yeah, it was the rebirth of the franchise, the 5th movie where it was essentially a heist movie and he plays Hobbs, who has been in the franchise since Fast and Furious 5 all the way now till 8. He will be in 9 and he has a spin-off. But the reason why I like it is because that's when I sort of saw him and took him seriously as like, he could play a serious authoritarian actor type person, but also have some comedy chops put in.
Right.
And he's like very confident in the role. And I think it may be because he just looks so cool in that movie. Like in every scene that he is in, he's cool. Especially when you put him alongside Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel's tiny compared to him. So that's my number 3 Dwayne Johnson movie. Let's do a round robin and then we go back to Kai for your number 2.
Right.
Which is?
Moana. Like, I know he's like not the lead actor in this movie. And in this position was Be Cool, the 2005 John Travolta film where he was in a supporting role. Then Nas brought up Moana and I was like, I remember really liking Moana. So I gotta say, again, I'm laughing thinking about it because he's got a line that's really funny in this movie where he was saying how his heart got broken and how the love of his life destroyed him. And then Moana says, what was your name? And he says, Nanya. And then she goes, Nanya what? And then he goes, Nanya business. That was the second.
That's a good line.
That's the second time I had to leave the cinema for a rock movie to laugh. Because I couldn't control. My best friend was like, you're embarrassing me. Because everybody was like, some people in Malay, they were saying, it's not that funny. Why is that guy laughing? So I left the cinema, went to the bathroom, laughed it out, and went back.
Oh, wow.
I'm very easily amused.
Okay, maybe it's just because it's The Rock.
I don't know, man. That's a good line.
Could be. Nas, your number 2 Dwayne Johnson
My
movie.
number 2 is Jumanji.
Oh, that's your number 2. Okay.
Yeah. I thought he was really good there.
Yes.
Super good. Why didn't I put that as number 1? But no, because like how he portrays this teenager, it's really good, and how his smoldering when he's
Right.
like smolder.
Oh, yeah. That's
Okay,
Well,
sorry.
his name is Smolder Bravestone.
yeah.
I love it. Him being the hero, just the dynamics with all the cast members.
Yeah.
I love it.
There was like a very good sort of,
Chemistry
chemistry
yeah.
with each other.
Yeah, and especially because he's worked with Kevin Hart before.
Yeah.
That was their second
That was
collaboration.
the second movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I think there's another one on the way.
Coming up. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they work well together. They should just
Because it's two
milk it.
contrasts.
And
Yeah.
then their Instagram comments to each other is hilarious.
Because they Instagram story at the same time.
Yeah, I know, but sometimes like The Rock would put something really heartfelt, and
Yeah.
Kevin Hart would just troll him. He's like, shut up.
But they did something
For Central Intelligence, yes.
They both Instagram storied at
Yes.
the same time,
Yeah.
and you see each other's phones
Yeah.
while they're doing it. Anyway, moving on to Del. Del, you're number 2.
So I'm only taking into account movies that he either starred in or as a supporting, not like he just cameo. Otherwise, I would have put The Losers in this top 3.
Right.
My second one would be San Andreas. I thought it was a fun disaster movie that doesn't take itself seriously, not like his other movies like Rampage. And he's got
Unnecessary shade.
Really?
Unnecessary shade, but okay.
and it's got a good supporting cast in this one as well. So everything seems to gel very nicely. I thought it was directed well. He was directed well. Because there are other movies where I thought he wasn't directed well and he looked very fake.
Yeah.
Very acting-like.
Wasn't San Andreas a Roland Emmerich film?
No.
No.
No, it wasn't.
The guy who made
Oh,
San
the
Andreas,
same guy who did Rampage. Yeah.
And the guy who made Skyscraper
Brad
also
Payton.
did something before
Central
that.
Intelligence.
Central Intelligence, was it?
Okay.
He works with the same director.
The same directors, probably.
He's like Tom Cruise then.
It's like Tom Cruise. Okay. My number 2 is actually a movie that Kai already brought up. It's Moana.
No.
Yeah, because it was the first animated
Yes.
voice role,
Yes.
and I think he suited the part well. There were a couple of featurettes that I saw before the movie came out, and I was like, The Rock, really? Like I can't take him seriously. But then I saw the movie, and the minute you see him on screen as what's his name?
His name's Maui.
Maui, yeah, he plays Maui with his giant fish hook and everything, and I was sold. I'm like, yep. That's him. He even had the same tattoos.
Almost the same, yeah.
Almost the same tattoos on the cartoon character. And yeah, he even through voice, he can convey certain emotions. Like he goes from this whole journey of being arrogant, and then he meets Moana, and then he learns humility, and then he gets his powers back, and it's a nice journey for his voice character. So that's my number 2. Moving on to the final spot for Kai, number 1.
I don't know. I feel like less sophisticated now because my last 2 were literally based on one-liners around the film. And
Which made you laugh.
that I had to leave the cinema.
Yeah.
But this was Del's number 3. Gridiron Gang is my favorite Rock movie. Because like Del said, like that is such a different film than anything he's still done.
Yeah.
He's still not done anything like that. Where there is not only is it a social message, I feel like Dwayne Johnson, the person coming from poverty, really saw something in that film. Because it's about kids at risk trying to be reformed into society through sports.
Yeah.
And I think, he's always talked about how he was impoverished as a kid, how he grew up with nothing. So I think that movie spoke to him on a personal level. And even though it's, it wasn't a box office hit or whatever, I still think it's his, my favorite
His
rock
his
movie.
best work, so to speak. Like he picked that.
There's a sincerity in his performance. There,
And also it was directed by an unknown music video director who has not done anything else after
That's
that.
why. That's
so weird.
And that movie is also like a time capsule because this was before The Rock became the Boulder.
Yeah.
He was still he's huge now, but he was
tiny
compared to what he is now. So it was a different era, and it just feels like a flashback to a different time.
Yeah, so you picked his origin movie.
That's it, for me.
And you see his sincerity in his acting because at the first game that they played, he lost his voice at the end of it.
Yeah.
He really did lose his voice.
Yeah.
That was for real.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear it. It broke. So I thought that was great.
There you go, Gridiron Gang. Your number 1, Kai. Let's move on to Naz. Your number 1, Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie.
Number 1 would be San Andreas for me. Because I have a thing for disaster movies.
Which is why you love Rampage.
No, I mean like disaster, like natural disaster. Like earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes. So I liked him here because you get to see him as like, is he like an ex-husband or something?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
separated.
he's an ex-husband.
separated.
And him trying to be a good dad, and then eventually he tries to save his wife and kids.
Yep.
Favorite scene would be like when his daughter drowns, and like
He
when
had
he had to like bang against the
break the
window.
glass. Yeah.
Like, underwater. Like, how do you do that? But
He's The Rock.
yeah, the Rock can do that. Yeah, that was my favorite scene. So I think that's what made me like the movie even more. Yeah.
Okay. Something to say about San Andreas as well. There were a lot of things in that movie that would not make sense if
Yeah.
it was in the real world. But I guess because it's The Rock, you sort of bought it. Like, okay.
Like how he got that boat? Like how? And like how he found that building?
Yeah.
How did you find your kid? But it's still a good
I
movie.
stopped watching halfway.
Really?
I don't know.
That you stop watching.
I don't know any of these references that you guys are making.
All right, Del, you're number one.
one.
Yeah, number one.
Moana.
Moana.
As a movie, this was a great movie. It's by Pixar. Wait.
By
No, it was
Disney.
Disney.
Disney. Yeah, Disney. And that year, I was so hoping that the song he sang, "You're Welcome," would have been nominated and he would perform on stage at the Oscars. But that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But he can sing. Not the best of voices,
But he's able to carry a note.
He can. And I thought his role in this one, like you said, Kev, is that's him.
It's very heartfelt and, you know, he
The movie itself, the story itself is heartfelt, and there's a message to it for everyone because it's a Disney movie. So yeah, this is the best one he's in.
Cool. That's your number one. And lastly, my number one Dwayne The Rock Johnson movie is a movie that Naz brought up. It's Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle. Mainly because, you know, I'm a big fan of the first Jumanji movie. So I was very excited to see what The Rock would bring for the sequel. And he didn't disappoint. That's for sure. You believed him as this, you know, kid, like a 13, 14-year-old boy in this body that he's not used to and he doesn't know his strengths or whether or not he can control himself. Yeah, it's an all-around good movie, and I think that was some of his best acting.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's strange to say it, like he was a wrestler, and I think he's the only wrestler who came out of the WWE, because Del mentioned this up top of this discussion, where it was a period of time where there was a lot of actors coming out.
John Cena.
We had John Cena. I mean, John Cena's another one, but his career is not as big as The Rock's. Not yet, I have to say. I mean, he probably has a future. Stone Cold Steve Austin had his hand in acting. Goldberg,
Oh yeah.
Goldberg came out of WWE and did some acting as well. But The Rock has become like this mainstay and like a box office juggernaut where if his name is attached to a project,
It makes money.
you kind of know that it's going to be, you know, at least decent, you know, and even if it is like a serious movie like Doom, which was one of his earlier projects, you still laughed at some of the dialogue that, you know, in the way he presents it. And yeah, so we have a lot of love for Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Tell us what you think, you know, get in touch with us here on the Wayang Crew in our addresses and, you know, all our social media down below in the description. Once again, this is Kevin, and we'll be signing off and seeing you next week, where we might bring you a short synopsis of Skyscraper. We'll see if we get around to doing that, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So, yep. Thank you once again for listening. This is Kevin for the Wayang Crew signing off. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.